Hi everyone, Petrik here. So for today's video, it will be a bookshelf tour. I think I mentioned this in my last year bookshelf tour video. I mentioned that I will be doing a bookshelf tour once a year, at least once a year. So the idea behind this is just to show you all the physical books that I own right now. And right now, apparently I have more than 400 physical books. Yeah, that's a lot of books. Apparently this year I received more than 100 physical books in total. That's the most I ever got within a single year. So yeah, just like last year, I'll be dividing this video into 4 exhibits because my bookshelves are located in several places. And just a heads up, the audio quality of this video is a bit different than my previous videos because my mic suddenly broke down in the middle of recording. It's almost Christmas and the new mic that I ordered still hasn't arrived. I hope that it will arrive as soon as possible because my next video is the best books of 2021. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's begin my 2021 bookshelf tour. Enjoy! So just like last year, I'm going to start from this bookshelf. The first one is the First Law Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, and then after that is the standalone trilogy in the First Law world. And on the right of Red Country is Chopin's and also the Trouble with Peace, but the UK mass market paperback. But at the top of it is the Age of Mathis trilogy, and this one starts from A Little Hatred, then The Trouble with Peace, and then The Wisdom of Crowds. This is the UK hardcover edition, and on the right of the Trouble with Peace, the UK mass market paperback, is Scott Lynch. This is the Gentleman Bastard sequence. The first one is The Lies of Locke Lamora, and then Red Seas Under Red Skies, and then The Republic of Thieves. After that is The Kingkiller Chronicle by Petrik Rothfuss, and at the top is Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler, and also The Name of the Wind by Petrik Rothfuss. I'm still waiting for the Wise Man's Fear 10th Anniversary Edition, which I hope will come out next year, even though it's not technically 10 years anymore. And after The Kingkiller Chronicle, it's another Joe Abercrombie's books. The first one is Chopin's. Again, this is the US hardcover, and also the Age of Mathis trilogy. This is again the US hardcover. And below that, we have the Brandon Sanderson, Robert Jordan, and also George R. Martin section. Starting from the left is the Mistborn Trilogy box set, and then the Alloy of Law. And at the back, it's Elantris 10th Anniversary Edition, which I received from my co-blogger. And then this is Warbreaker, the mass market paperback. I really should update this with the Dragonsteel edition one day. And then on the right of Secret History is Shadows of Self, which is Mistborn Era 2, just like the Alloy of Law. And also The Bands of Mourning. Really cannot wait for the Lost Metal. And after that, we have Mistborn, the Dragonsteel edition, which again is sent to me by my co-bloggers, and I'm always thankful for this edition. And this one is Doomslug, which I got after I received this edition. And this is Arcanum Unbounded, the Cosmic Collection. And finally, we have the Stormlight Archive, starting from The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, Oathbringer, and then finally Rhythm of War. And at the top is Warbreaker artwork by Dan Dos Santos, which I also got because I received this one. Yeah, Mistborn Dragonsteel edition. And on the right of the Stormlight Archive, we have A Memory of Light by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson, and again, A Warrior of the Altai by Robert Jordan. And after that is the George R. R. Martin's section, starting from Fire and Blood, and then A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, A Game of Thrones. This is the 20th Anniversary Edition by Harper Voyager, and then A Clash of Kings and A Storm of Swords, and The World of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. And below this bookshelf, there is a Stormlight Archive playing card. And below that is a mini bookshelf here. So yeah, I'm going to begin from the top left here. First we have Stormblood by Jeremy Suzal, and then Master of Sorrows by Justin Cole. And then after that we have the Last War Trilogy by Mike Sheckle, and then The Hand of the Sun King by J.T. Greathouse. These are the physical ARC edition and also the hardcover edition. And besides The Hand of the Sun King, we have the Ember Blade by Chris Wooding. And finally, The Kingdom of Liar by Nick Martell. And below that, starting from the left, we have The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and then The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu, and also the first 2 books in the Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. I'm still waiting for my copy of The Veiled Throne to arrive, and it still hasn't arrived yet. And on the right of the Wall of Storms, we have Where Loyalties Lie and The Fifth Empire of Men by Rob J. Hayes, and also Never Die and Spirits of Vengeance by Rob J. Hayes. And on the right of this mini bookshelf, we have this Tower of John Gwynne. Yeah, this is all of my John Gwynne's books. Starting from the top is A Time of Blood, that's the physical ARC edition. And then below that is The Faithful and the Fallen quartet, starting from Malice until Wrath. And below Rat, we have The Shadow of the Gods and A Time of Dread. These two are the physical arc edition. And then we have Of Blood and Bone trilogy. And finally, The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. That's the Goldsboro edition and the normal hardcover edition. And moving on to the right of my A Song of Ice and Fire collection, this is my floating bookshelf, so there are 3 of them. And from the left here we have my Malazan Book of the Fallen and also Karkhana's trilogy, all of them by Steven Erikson. And on the middle section, this is my Brian bookshelf. Starting from the top here, this is the Empire's Ruin. That's the audiobook sent by the publisher. Very cool stuff. I never owned an audiobook like this. And below that is the Sorcerer's Song trilogy. That's the first 2 books. The Bard's Blade and A Chorus of Fire by Brian Anderson. And after that we have The 5 Warrior Angels by Brian Lee Durfee and Chronicle of the Unhewn Throne trilogy by Brian Staffeli. And below that we have Skullsworn and The Empire's Ruin, again by Brian Staffeli. I'm still waiting for my US edition of The Empire's Ruin and it still hasn't arrived yet, even though it's been 5 months. And moving on to the final floating bookshelf, starting from the top here, this is Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson. And after that is The God King's Legacy by Richard Nell. And then we have Pandemonium Rising series by Michael Slater, starting from Solace Lost until Fate Lost. And then there's also the novella Valley of the Free. And below that is Paternal's Trilogy by Doug Ashton. And then Beyond Redemption by Michael Fletcher. And below that is Songs of Insurrection by J.C. Kang. And then The Look of a King by Tom Dumbrell, and then The Mirror's Truth by Michael R. Fletcher, and finally Divinity's Twilight Rebirth by Christopher Russell. So this concludes the first exhibit of my bookshelf tour. And now we arrive at the second exhibit of my bookshelf tour. I'm going to start from my floating bookshelf here. Starting from the top is the Remembrance of Earth Past trilogy by Cixin Liu, and below that is basically the Red Rising saga by Pierce Brown, starting from Red Rising until A Dark Age. And below that is The Witchwood Crown and The Empire of Grass by Tad Williams. That's the first 2 books in the Last King of Boston art series. Even though I haven't started Memory, Sorrow, Anton, I just have to get these 2 books because they are super gorgeous. And now moving on to the right here, this is basically my Death Note and also my Robin Hobbs section. But there is a new edition at the right. So starting from the left is Death Note All-in-One Edition. Behind that is the Death Note novella. And to the right of Death Note All-in-One Edition is the Inheritance, a collection of stories that's by Robin Hobb and Megan Lindholm, which is basically the same person. And to the right of the Inheritance is the Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince. And to the right of the Willful Princess and the Piebald Prince is basically my entire The Realm of the Elderlings. So the first one is Farseer Trilogy, and then Life Ship Trader Trilogy, and then Tony Man Trilogy, and then Rainwald Quartets, and finally the Fitz and the Fool Trilogy. So that's starting from Assassin's Apprentice until Assassin's Fate. That's the entire 16 books in the main series of the Realm of the Elderlings. This is obviously one of my most treasured collection. And behind that is the Farseer Trilogy Illustrated Edition. And hopefully one day they will do the Illustrated Edition for the Life Ship Traders and beyond. And moving on to the right of Assassin's Fate, we have the Reform Empire Trilogy by Raymond E. Weiss and Jenny Wirtz. And on the top of it, we have To Write Hell's Chasm by Jenny Wirtz. To the right of this bookshelf, we have the section that's not available in my last year's bookshelf tour because, well, as you can probably guess why this section exists, I'm running out of space. And sorry for the sudden change in audio quality because my mic suddenly broke down. So yeah, I'm gonna have to use my headset for this one. I hope that it's still tolerable. And I will be using pictures for this section and the next section to make things easier. And starting from the left here, from the top is Snakewood, The Winter Road, and Brother Red by Adrian Selby. And below that we have The Kingdom of Grit, the second and third book by Tyler Whitesides. And after that we have Son of the Storm by Suyi Davis Okungbowa. After that we have Blood of an Exile, Sorcery of a Queen, Fury of a Demon by Brian Naslund. And finally, another copy of A Memory of Light by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. And on the right here at the top we have The Splinter King by Mike Brooks. After that we have The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. And after that we have Cold from the North and The Darkest Dusk by D.W. Ross. Below that we have Pyramidion by G.E. Newbegin. And then after that we have The Fall of the Phoenix and A Hero's Welcome by Daniel Kelly. And then below that is The Maleficent 7 by Cameron Johnston. This is actually the only Angry Robot physical books that I own. So yeah, I have to treasure this one. And below that is Duty Bound by Mac Aaron Alvarez II. And finally below that we have the Ronin Saga by Matthew Wolff. So The Knife's Age, The Citadel of Fire, Bastion of Sun, and Tides of Fate. And before I show you the books behind these two pile of books, on the right here we have Peace on Turmoil, 2 of them by Elliot Brooks. And below that we have Wraith Blade by S.M. Boyce. And below that we have Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. And then A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. And after that, Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. And then Blade's Age, Traitor's Hope, Cyro's Claw by Virginia McLean. And finally, another copy of Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is the illustrated edition, and I accidentally got this one, so I have now 2 of them. And now time to show you what's behind this pile of books. And starting from the top left, we have Children of Ruin and The Doors of Eden, and also Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And below that we have The Last Emperox by John Scalzi. I won this one in a Goodreads giveaway. And below that we have Paulini by To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. No, I'm joking. It is To Sleep in the Stars by Paulini. And below that we have Eragon by Paulini. Oh my god, I almost said Paulini by Eragon. And below that we have Dragon Slayer and Knight of the Silver Circle by Duncan Hamilton. And then again, another copy of Children of Ruin and Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And below that we have The Quantum Thief, The Fractal Prince, and The Causal Angel by Hanu Rajaniemi. And below that we have The Warship and Jack 4 by Neil Asher. And finally, Nottingham by Nathan McCarrick. And on the right here, starting from the top, we have The Test by Sylvain Neuvel. And then The Armored Saint, The Queen of Crows, and The Killing Light by Michael. And below that we have Docile, and then Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And after that is a non-fiction, In Order to Live by Yeonmi Park. And below that we have The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood. And then The Name of All Things by Jen Lyons. And after that we have Wild Savage Stars by Perez. And we have Her Last Flight by Beatrice Williams. This is another copy that I got from Goodreads. And below that we have The Wolf of Orenyaro by K.S. Piloso. This is the physical ARC edition of the self-published edition that I got. If I'm not mistaken, I think this was the first physical ARC edition that I ever received, if I'm not mistaken. And after that we have again The Name of All Things by Jen Lyons, and then The Ruin of Kings, and finally The Memory of Souls by Jen Lyons. So this is the end of the second exhibit of my bookshelf tour, and it pretty much looks like this. And now let's move on to the third exhibit of my bookshelf tour. And I'm going to start from the top, and from the left here is Strange the Dreamer duology by Laini Taylor. And then after that we have The Poison War duology by Sam Hawk. And then Fate of the Fallen by Kelkate, and then A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martin, and also its sequel, A Desolation Called Peace, which I haven't read yet. And after that we have The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood, and then Blood of Heirs by Alicia Wanstallberg. And below that is another section, and starting from the left is The Wolf of Orenyaro, The Ikesar Falcon, and then The Dragon of Jin Sayeng by K.S. Viloso. And then we have the first 2 books in the Thieves of Fate by Tracy Townsend, The Ninth and the Fall. And after that we have Gideon the Ninth and also Herod the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. And finally we have Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik, and also The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And moving on below, I'm going to start from the left again, and this one is Ancillary Justice, Ancillary Sword, Ancillary Mercy by Anne Leckie. And then after that we have The Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. And above that we have Jade City and Jade War by Fonda Lee. And on the right we have The Green Bone Saga, the entire set, the Illumicrate edition by Fonda Lee. Yeah, this is so gorgeous. I did an unboxing of this one recently. And finally, at the most right, we have The Stone Knife by Anna Stevens. And at the bottom of this bookshelf, first we have the Poppy War Trilogy by R.F. Kuang. And above that, we also have another copy of the Poppy War, and that's the physical ARC edition. And above that is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. Now moving on to the right of the Burning God, we have the Vengeance Trilogy by David Madsen. This is the self-published edition. And after that, we have the first 3 books in the Reborn Empire quartet. Yeah, the last book will be coming out next year. And after that, we have In Shadows We Fall by David Madsen again. And finally, Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. And on the right of this bookshelf, we have another bookshelf that's very similar to this one. I'm going to start from the top section again, and starting from the left here. First we have Refraction and also Dark Theory by Wick Welker. And then after that we have the 10,000 Doors of January, and also The Once and Future Witches by Alex Harrow. After that, The Bone Shot Daughter, the physical ARC, and also the hardcover by Andrea Stewart. And finally, Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. And moving on below, first we have the Books of Babel series by Josiah Bancroft, starting from Sandin Ascends and then Arm of the Sphinx. And finally, The Hot King. I'm still waiting for my copy of The Fall of Babel to come here. And after that, we have The Keeper's Trilogy by David Dalglish. I still don't have the final book. I think it got lost in the mail. It's so sad. But after that, we have The Great Codes by Sebastian de Cassel, and at the top of it is We Ride the Storm by David Madsen, and also the fourth book in The Great Codes by Sebastian de Cassel, A Tyrant's Throne. And on the right of Saint's Blood is Ringlander by Michael S. Jackson. This is the paperback edition and also the hardcover edition. And moving on below, starting from the left, is The Martian by Andy Weir, and then we have The Grey Bastards by Jonathan French. After that, we have The Blood of the Sphere by Mark Timoney, and then The Fall and of Blood and Fire by Ryan K. Hill, and then A Ritual of Bones and A Ritual of Flesh by Lee Conley. I still have to read these books, by the way. And also The Combat Codes by Alexander Darwin, and then Dark Matter and Recursion by Blake Crouch, and finally Hollywood Park by Michael Yolet, and finally On Riding by Stephen King. I got this one from Sarah Reeds. I still have to read this one. I heard that this is pretty good. And finally, at the bottom of this bookshelf, first we have Dreams of the Dying by Nicholas Litzau, and after that we have Iconoclast Trilogy by Mike Shell, and we have Darkblade Assassin by Andy Peloquin, and besides that is The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, and finally The Rage of Dragons and The Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter. So this is the third exhibit of my bookshelf tour, and it looks like this. Now let's move on to the final section of my bookshelf tour. And now we have arrived at the final exhibit of my bookshelf tour. I'm going to start from the top here. First we have the Broken Empire Trilogy, and then Red Queen Sword Trilogy, and then Book of the Ancestor Trilogy, and finally The Girl and the Stars, all of them by Mark Lawrence. So this is kind of like my Mark Lawrence section. And moving on to the right, first we have Between Two Fires, and then The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Bullman, and then this is my Tolkien section, starting from The Children of Húrin, and then Beren and Luthien, and then The Fall of Gondolin, and finally Lord of the Rings box set. As you can probably tell, this is where I usually record my videos, and on the top of my Tolkien section is The Legends of the First Empire by Michael J. Sullivan, and on the top here we have The Fireman by Joe Hill. And here we have A Dragon sent by my friend Dorina. Thank you so much, Dorina. And also Kawanashi, which I bought in Korea a few years ago. This is so cute, right? And now moving on to the right, but I'm going to start from the top. First, on the top here, on the exterior section of my bookshelf, first we have the Powder Mage Trilogy and then Gods of Blood and Powder Trilogy by Brian McClellan. On the right, we have Warcry, again by Brian McClellan. And moving on inside, first we have The Expanse by James S. A. Corey. And on the top, we have the Long Price Quartet. Yeah, this is the Omnibus edition. The first one here is Shadow and Betrayal, and then The Price of War. And on the right of Tiamat's Wrath, we have Tigana by Guy Garville Kay, and then The Core, this is the Physical Arc edition, and also The Painted Man by Peter V. Brett. And moving on below, on the exterior section, first we have Watership Down by Richard Adams. This one is sent to me by Sarah from Sarah Reads, yeah. And below that, we have Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell, and after that, we have the Arthurian Tales by Giles Christian. These 5 are excellent Arthurian retelling, by the way. You should read them if you haven't read them. And after that, below Camelot, we have Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield, and then the Troy Trilogy by David Gemmell, and the final book also by Stella Gemmell. And on the right, we have Warlord by Bernard Cornwell. And moving on inside, first we have Shogun by James Clavell, and then A Man at Arms by Stephen Pressfield, and then The Cemetery of Forgotten Books by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, one of my favorite series of all time, and also the Divine City Trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett, and also Vigilance and the Foundryside Trilogy, the Founder Trilogy, sorry. The first book is Foundryside, and then the second book is Shorefall, all of them by Robert Jackson Bennett. And at the back here on the left, sorry I cannot show you, but that one is The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, and on the right is The Boy, I think The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, yeah, by Charlie Mackesy. And moving on below, on the exterior section, first we have The Last Smile in Thunder City by Luke Arnold and also its sequel, Dead Man in a Ditch. And after that, we have the Anthony Ryan section. First is the Draconis Memoria trilogy, and on the right of Draconis Memoria is Bloodsong, the first book in A Raven Shadow. And below that is The Wolf's Call and The Black Song by Anthony Ryan. These are the Raven Blades duology. And after that, we have The Pariah, the newest book by Anthony Ryan. And on the right, again, we have The Wolf's Call. This is the Physical Arc edition. And moving on inside, first we have Peace Talks and Battleground by Jim Butcher, and then the Lightbringer series by Bran Wicks, starting from The Black Prism until The Burning White, and then The Legacy of Ash and Legacy of Steel by Matthew Ward. And now moving on to the bottom of this bookshelf, let's start from the top. First we have the Wounded Kingdom trilogy by R.J. Barker, and then we have the Tidchild trilogy, again by R.J. Barker, and then the Band trilogy, this is Kings of the World and Bloody Rose so far. by Nicholas Eames. And then on the left and on the right, we have The God of Prayer. And then below Bloody Rose, we have The Shadow Saint and The Broken God. These are the 3 books by Gareth Hanrahan in the Black Iron Legacy. And on the bottom here, we have A Boy and His Dog at the End of the World by C.A. Fletcher. And now here we are at the final section of my bookshelf tour. Starting from the left, first we have the Licanius Trilogy by James Ironlyton, and then after that we have Nevernight Trilogy and Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff, and on the top here we have the first 2 volumes in Solo Leveling, and finally at the end of this bookshelf tour we have The Book of the New Sun Folio Society Edition by Gene Wolfe. So this is the end of the 4th and final exhibit of my bookshelf tour, and it looks pretty much like this. Sorry if the angle is a bit weird, I'm trying to get them all in one frame, and yeah, it looks like this. So yeah, that's pretty much it from me today. Thank you so much for watching my 2021 bookshelf tour. I think I received more than 100 physical books within this year, and yeah, that's a lot of books. I can't believe that I actually received that many books, but combine the number of books that I bought, I received from friends, publishers, and authors, yeah, it indeed amounted to more than 100 physical books. That's why I'm running out of space. But I'm always grateful for all these books that I have on my bookshelf tour, because seriously, these books, they give me comfort. Whether I've read them or not, they really gave me comfort. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me today. Let me know what you think of my bookshelf tour. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you for your support. Bye bye.